Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to our distance learning. I'm going to be recording lessons for you guys, and then if you have any questions, you can always email me at rbowman@powayusd.com, and you can just let me know what worksheet you're working on and what problem number you have a question on, and I'll be able to help you out. We're starting a new chapter today, chapter 6, and it's on systems of equations. So today's lesson, we're going to learn how to turn equations into the y equals mx plus b form. That should sound very familiar to you guys. Y equals mx plus b, and it's also called the slope-intercept form. The reason it's called the slope-intercept form is that m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. Okay, so this is the most convenient way for us to write out an equation, the equation of a line, if we want to graph it. So let's go ahead and start. Hopefully you saw my link to the worksheets for today in MyConnect, and you were either able to print out your worksheets for us to do together, or you can use a separate sheet of paper and just write out the answers for me as we go along. So today, let's see, Georgia joined the big race. Her race can be modeled with the equation y equals 3x plus 4, where x is the time in seconds and y is the distance in meters. How much of a head start did Georgia get? How can you tell from the equation? So if we think back to the other big race problems that we did where the kids were on tricycles, we always used the y-intercept for the head start. So for this problem, the y-intercept would be the b value at the end of the equation, so it would be 4. And it tells us that, let's see, if we're talking about distance for a head start, that the distance is in meters. So it would be 4 meters. Part B says, what was Georgia's rate of speed? And remember, the speed for these problems is the same as the slope or the growth. So her speed was 3. And if I'm talking about meters and seconds, and I want to talk about speed, I would say meters per second. Okay, next it says, you could find the slope and y-intercept of the line y equals 3x plus 4 quickly because the equation was in the y equals mx plus b form. But what if the equation is in a different form? Explore the situation below. The linear equation negative 6x plus 2y equals 10 is written in standard form. Can you easily tell what the slope of the line is and what the y-intercept is? And the answer to that is no, you can't. They're hidden in there. So let's go ahead and make a table and then we'll graph the line. So for my table, here's the x values that I'm going to plug in, and then I'll see what my y value equals. Let's do the first one together. So I'm going to plug in a negative 2 for x. So I have negative 6 times negative 2 plus 2y equals 10. Negative 2 times negative 6 is 12. If I subtract 12 from both sides of the equal sign, I have 2y equals negative 2. And then if I divide by 2, y would equal negative 1. See if you guys can do the same thing, plugging in a negative 1 for x, a 0 for x, and a 1 for x. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next 3, and then restart the video, and I'll go over how I got my answers in case you need to see it. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try to find the next 3 y values. Okay, when I plug a -1 in for x, I have -6 times -1 plus 2y equals 10. That makes +6 plus 2y equals 10. I'm going to use some mental math here. I'm going to say, 6 plus what makes 10? I know that it's 6 plus 4. 2 times what makes 4? 2 times 2 makes 4. So y should be 2. And if I wasn't able to do that mentally, I would use the same steps I used before to find the answer. Zeros are usually the easiest to plug in. So if I have a -6 times 0, I know that that's going to equal 0. So now I have 2y equals 10. I can ask myself 2 times what equals 10? And the answer is 5. Since I know that this is a linear equation, it tells me I'm going to graph a line, I should have the same growth in my y values. It should be the same each time. So if I can find the pattern, then I can decide what would go in the last box. So let's see, it looks like I'm adding 3 each time. So if I add 3 again, 5 plus 3 is 8. So that's just a shortcut way to do it. Otherwise, we could always do all the steps that I did when I plugged -2 in over here. But if you want to find the pattern, that's just a shortcut. Now we're going to graph these points. So my first point is -2, -1. So I'm going to start at 0, 0. I'm going to go in the x direction to -2 and in the y direction to -1. Next I have -1, 2. To the left to -1 and then up to 2. Next is 0, 5. Now if I'm doing this correctly, I know I'm going to graph a line. All of my points should line up in a straight line, and if one of them doesn't, then I would go back and double check what went wrong. Okay, I just realized I don't have a ruler. So I'm going to take a piece of paper that I have to draw a straight line. There we go. Okay, and then here it says use your graph to write an equivalent equation of the line. So now we're going to write, this was the equation that we're using, but now we're going to write the equation for this line in y equals mx plus b form. So let's see, it would be y equals, the m value is my slope, so I take the point that's on the left and I say, let's see here, I went up 3, so it's going to be a +3, and to the right 1. So my slope is either 3 over 1, or I could just say 3. Those are both correct answers. Then I have my x, and then I have my y value, which is a +5. There we go. So if I was given the equation in this form to start with, it would have been a lot easier to graph. I would have just plugged in my y-intercept, and then I would have used my slope to go up 3 over 1. D. Part D says, now use algebraic steps to rewrite the equation, here, the equation that we've been using, in the y equals mx plus b form. So let's see. -6x plus 2y equals 10. In order to get it in the y equals mx plus b form, I want just y to be standing alone. So I'm trying to figure out how to get y standing alone on the left side of the equation. The first thing I would want to cancel out would be this -6x chunk. And the way that I do that is doing the opposite of -6x. So I'm going to add the whole 6x chunk to both sides of the equal sign. And remember, we can always put a line where the equal sign is so we can easily see the left side and the right side of the equation. So now I have 2y equals And now these are not like terms. One has an x and one does not, so I need to keep them separated. If I look at the format that I want my final answer to be in, I want the x chunk to come first and then the regular number to come at the end. That's going to be the y-intercept. So here I'm going to put the 6x chunk first, and then I'm going to put the plus 10 at the end. So now it's starting to look like y equals mx plus b. The last thing I'm going to do is divide by 2. And now I'm left with y equals, which is what I want. And then both of these chunks are going to be divided by 2. So 6x divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I have 3x. And then a positive 10 divided by 2. That makes 5. So now I have y equals 3x plus 5. And then we go back. Does the new equation match what we got up here? Yes, it does. Good, we did it correctly. Okay, so we're done with that page. Go ahead and go to the next page. Okay, so here it says writing equations in the y equals mx plus b form. Use algebraic steps, so we're going to do just what we did for the last problem on the last page. Use algebraic steps to rewrite the equations in the y equals mx plus b form. Be sure to record all your work and be prepared to share your steps with the class. Obviously, we won't be doing that part, but go ahead and just make sure you're showing all of your work here. So we have 6 problems where we're going to put the equations in the y equals mx plus b form. Part A. So if I'm trying to get this y standing all by itself, on the left side of the equal sign, what I want to get rid of is this positive 2x. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides of the equal sign. So here I'm left with y equals, and then I look over here and my like terms would be this 3x chunk minus the 2x. This minus 7 is not a like term because it doesn't have the x. So if I have 3 x's and I take away 2 x's, I'm left with 1x. And remember, I could write a 1 in front of the x, or I could leave it off. It means the same thing. And then I still have the minus 7. So that's all I have to do for that one. It looks like these 3 problems are pretty similar. So go ahead and try B, C, and D on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, and then you can restart the video, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you the answers. Okay, for part B, I would be subtracting an x, and I think it might be helpful to say I'm going to subtract a 1x here. And then I have 2y equals, these are like terms, so notice I said the minus 1x, I put it right under the x chunk. So that leaves me with 2 x's plus 4. And then my last step to get y standing by itself is to divide by 2. And so I have to divide both of those chunks by 2. So y equals 1x plus 4 divided by 2 is 2. For part C, if I want y standing alone, first I would cancel out this minus 2. Oh, this one's a little bit more exciting, we'll say. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my line down where the equal sign is for this one. And this plus 2 cancels out with a minus 2. Now I have 3y equals, none of these are like terms. This one has a y, this one has an x, and the negative 2 doesn't have a variable. So they're still just going to be all spread out. Okay, now this is a little bit different than the other problems we did because I have a y chunk on the right side of the equal sign, and I want all my y's on the left so that my answer looks like y equals mx plus b. So now I'm going to cancel out the 2y chunk by saying minus 2y. on the left side, 3y's minus 2y's leaves me with y equals, and then I'm left with negative 5x minus 2. So that's in the y equals mx plus b form. For part D, let's see, I have 2y, so I want to keep my y's on the left side of the equal sign, but this negative 6 I want to cancel out, so I'm going to say plus 6. Notice I put the plus 6 on this side right below the minus 6 because they're like terms. And in this case, the plus 6 cancels out on both sides, and I'm left with 2y equals 2x. And then I still want to solve for y, so I'm going to divide by 2. Y equals 1x, or just x. And then this doesn't look like it ended up in the y equals mx plus b form, but technically it could be y equals x plus 0. So this actually is in the correct y equals mx plus b form. Okay, the last two are a little longer. For those of you who like a challenge, go ahead and stop the video and try these ones on your own, and then you can come back and I'll explain how to do them. Okay, so the first thing I can do in these last two, or at least for part E, is say, do I have any like terms on the same side of the equal sign? And here I have positive 5 and negative 3. Those are like terms, so it would be simpler, which is called simplifying, simpler to say instead of 5 minus 3, I could just say 2. So I'm going to say I have negative 3x plus 2 equals 2y minus 3x plus 2. Okay, and then those of you that worked ahead, there's different orders that we can do these steps in. So you may have done a different order and still gotten the right answer. I'll show you the way that I'm going to do it. I know that I eventually want my y to be on the left side of the equal sign, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel it out on the right side so that I can have it on the left. None of these are like terms, so I'm just going to list them all out because I can't combine any of them. And now I want just the y's to remain over here. So I'm going to get rid of the negative 3x and the plus 2 by doing the opposite. So instead of negative 3x, I'm going to say plus 3x. Notice I'm going to put it right below the other x chunk. And here, they cancel out on each side. So now I have negative 2y plus 2 equals 2. And then we can subtract 2 on both sides of the equal sign, and it cancels out on both sides. So instead of putting nothing here, I would put a 0, because 2 minus 2 makes 0. And then I'm going to divide by negative 2. And in this case, I actually have y equals 0, which again doesn't look like it's in y equals mx plus b form, but it actually is. Just the m value is a 0 and the b value is a 0. Okay, last one. So here I want to keep the y on the left side of the equal sign and cancel everything else out. So first I'm going to subtract 1x. Notice I'm putting it on right below my other x chunk. And I still have a negative y. Since that negative sign is in front of the y, to the left of the y, it's still there. And then I'm going to, since I want y standing alone, I'm going to add 2 on both sides of the equal sign. And now I have negative y equals 3x plus 4. And now I can't leave my y a negative. Technically this says negative 1y. So I'm going to divide by a negative 1 to cancel it out. And if I divide both of these chunks by a negative 1, it's going to change the sign. So 3 divided by -1 is -3. So -3x. And 4 divided by -1 is -4. Okay, this is something that we're going to continue to work on. So if this seems like a difficult concept, then you're right on track. It's something that we're going to continue to practice. And even these ones are challenge problems. So if they weren't problems that you could do independently, don't worry about that. We're going to continue to practice this skill over and over together during our lessons. This next sheet is just review any of the worksheets that have my handwritten number after the title. So number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and so on is what I would be assigning for homework. So it's extra practice. So today, this extra practice is just solving 2-step equations. So it doesn't have to do with what we did in the lesson today. This should be review. I'll show you how to do the first one, and then if you'd like to work on this for extra practice, that would be great. So for the first problem, I'm solving for x. The first step I can take when solving for a variable is any canceling out that I can do with adding or subtracting. So for number 1, my first step would be to add 2 to both sides of the equal sign. Then I would have 8x equals 44. Whoops, that's not right. I accidentally subtracted 2. 8x equals 48. There we go. That's going to make the next step easier. Then the next step is dividing by 8. And so x equals 48 divided by 8. I know that 40 divided by 8 is 5, so it would be one more. So x equals 6. Okay, go ahead and try the rest on your own, and then you can look at the answer key for today's worksheets to check your answers. And if you have any questions on any of them, you can email me. Okay, thank you for joining me today. I'm hoping these lessons are going to be helpful to you. Obviously not as helpful as if we were in class together, but I'm hoping it's pretty close. So email me anytime you have questions, and thanks for your hard work today. Have a good day.